Here we go, playing God, all right? While there are tens of thousands of healthy babies languishing in foster homes, a new breed of entrepreneur has emerged, breeding babies for the rich. Who the hell appointed them God? Not us. Come on. All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to talk about something that has not been in the news for a few weeks, maybe even a few months, but we expect to see it back in the news very shortly. We're going to be joined by some experts in this area tonight on the program. We should get a lot of interesting information, all right? First, I want to introduce you to Noel Keene, who is a surrogate attorney. Mr. Keene, how are you, sir?
Fine, thank you.
Nice to have you on the program with us. Bob Arenstein was Miss Whitehead's attorney, her first attorney, and she was the Baby M case, which most of our audience at home and in the studio is familiar with. Let me start with Noel. Noel, you're the attorney in the Baby M case, am I correct?
Not correct. I was the attorney that drew up the contract to put the Stearns and Whiteheads together.
Oh, you put the two folks together. All right. That case personifies everything I think that's wrong with surrogacy. Is this indicative of a problem of the whole concept, both morally and legally?
Well, I might tell you it's less than a 1% occurrence where one case goes bad, but it does give rise that when one case goes bad, what can happen?
When one case goes bad, it's a bad scene, right?
That's correct.
Mr. Arenstein, any response?
One case that's gone bad in the last year or two or three, we've had about 10 or 15 cases of problems, and if you look at the contract in the Baby M case, you can see a lot of problems with it, the one that was drawn up by Mr. Keene.
All right, now, you're not only familiar with Mr. Keene, but also with the contract Mr. Keene and Mary Beth Whitehead signed. Tell us some of the specific financial and contractual obligations, all right?
Contract provided that if Mary Beth delivered a live and adopted baby that was fully adopted, that $10,000 would be paid to her by the Stearns, which was held in escrow by Mr. Keene's Infertility Center. However, if she delivered a stillborn child or miscarried from the 5th to the 9th month, she would only get paid $1,000. And if she miscarried up to the 5th month, she would get nothing. Mr. Stern had a right, it was not written in the contract, but had no right, could walk away from taking the child if the baby was born deformed or mentally retarded.
All right, do me a favor, define surrogacy for us, all right, so we can get right to that.
Well,
right.
Surrogacy is when a man, through artificial insemination, donates his sperm or has his sperm taken, given to a woman to produce a baby for that man over a period of time.
With that woman's ovum.
That's correct, with that woman's ovum. That's one type of surrogacy. Right. There's a gestational surrogate, a regular surrogate. The normal surrogacy is a woman donates her body, her ovum, and a man donates his sperm. She conceives a child for 9 months and then gives up the child. She has her rights terminated as a parent and surrenders the child to this adoptive mother and the biological father.
So that's the Baby M case.
That's
right?
correct.
But, you know, you say she didn't get anything if she lost the baby before the 5th month of gestation. By the same token, I'm sure Mr. Keene didn't get anything either, did you, sir?
I get paid in the very beginning, and I agree to work with the couple until they have a child. Well, so if it took 2 to 3 years, I'd be working with the same couple.
Mr. Keene gets a non-refundable fee. A fee of, in this case, was $10,000. Right now, I read in the paper yesterday in the Times, they had an article about his situation in Germany, where he's now getting $15,000. I don't know if that's true, but that was in the paper yesterday. That fee is non-refundable, irrespective if the deal goes sour or if there's a problem. He's entitled to that fee, irrespective of the work he does.
Mr. Keene, you have been called by the New York Times as the father of surrogacy in the United States, and I guess you are the largest surrogate attorney in this country and all over the world now. You've become international, I understand.
I think that's true, but keep in mind that I became involved in this area at the request of an infertile couple who asked me to help them find a woman to do this. And it was a natural progression that once more people found out about me, the more people came to me.
Do you advertise in any way, shape, or form?
Not for couples. We advertise for surrogates, but I've never advertised for couples.
You advertise for surrogates to women who are available to donate their bodies? I shouldn't say donate, to lease their bodies.
To donate their ovum, that's correct. Or lease their ovum. Anyway,
they're only leasing their ovum?
Well, giving of their own, you know, giving of time themselves.
They sell the ovum.
Well, I know, I'm not trying to be picky here. I'm just trying to get to, when they donate the ovum, they're also donating the womb, right, to carry it in.
That's correct.
So
That's selling. That's not donating.
Well, yeah, they're selling it. That kind of sounds to me a little bit, oh boy.
I call it
women are going to get
reproductive
upset. I mean, it sounds like prostitution.
I call it reproductive prostitution. That's the phrase I call
would you go along with that phrase, Mr. King?
Well, I don't think I would, unless you're also going to say that men that give their sperm is doing the same thing, and we have around 20,000 babies born a year from that.
There's a difference between giving your sperm and selling a fertilized embryo. We're not selling the egg, we're selling the fertilized embryo.
Keep in mind that the fertilization takes place by the father of the child, who assumes total responsibility for that child also.
He doesn't have to, though.
He
In fact,
does
he can
have
walk
to.
away.
He
What about the
does
AIDS
have
case?
to.
What about the AIDS case that just happened now, where the father had an AIDS baby and he refused to take the child? And there's
I
a
don't know
lawsuit
anything
going
about
on.
the AIDS case, but in surrogate parenting, the father assumes total responsibility for
Doesn't
that
have to.
child.
There's no way you can make, other than financially, a father or anybody else take custody of a child if he doesn't want to. You can't legally do that.
Well, that's true if you father your own child.
That's exactly right. And people
With your
walk away
wife.
from- What happened to Malakoff Stiver? When it wasn't, you know, when they had the baby and he decided that the baby was born with herpes, he walked away from it. Even though it wasn't his baby, they had a blood test to show that, he walked away from it. There's a lawsuit going on now where he doesn't want the baby even though he paid for one.
Well, that's, you know, it's really it's a confusing issue tonight, and I hope we're going to get this straightened out tonight. But if indeed it's reproductive prostitution, that's the same thing as calling this gentleman a pimp.
And you might also indicate that the couple that cannot have a child are the Johns. I mean, if that's the category you're going to put it in.
Are you working with any poor couples to do this for?
I'm sorry.
Donating some of your time with poor couples to help them?
We started out in the very beginning with very average people that could not afford this process. We looked for surrogates that would volunteer their time.
How many did you find?
Well, we didn't find very many in the very beginning, and I'm not so sure we'd find many today. But we found it back in 1976 at least one that would carry a child without a fee. But I think if you're limited to those that would not receive a fee, you would be working with a much more riskier situation.
Well, you have a problem with that, too. They had a case of a woman who was paid $1,500 out of Mexico. They brought her up here illegally to bear a baby. They told her they were going to take the egg out of her uterus. They left it in. She bore the baby, and she wanted to keep it. They wouldn't let her keep it. $1,500. They're starting to breed women, take them from second world, third world countries, bring them up here for cheaper money.
Bob,
If you take a look at the dollars and cents,
please.
well, I know, I mean,
are you indeed importing women from other countries who, well,
Germany.
No, let me
Look
ask
at
you a question.
Germany.
No, let's ask them.
Germany,
are you
they're
bringing women
advertising
from
in
other
Germany.
countries where this is illegal and doing it here?
We are not, except that we have used some women from Canada who have been surrogates.
What
That's
about
correct.
Germany? What's going on in Germany?
Infertile couples are in Germany as well as the United
How about
States.
surrogates?
And South Africa, Italy, Germany, France. They're coming from around the world
Are
to
they
have
allowed
a
to
child.
have it over there? Are they allowed
No,
to
it's
do it over
illegal
there?
in those countries.
Apparently they're doing it in France. They cannot do it in England where there's a payment. They cannot do it in Australia. I don't think they've, and maybe Germany, they can't do it there
Can't
either.
do it in Germany either, except that you got away with, or at least the problem in the German clinic is still in the courts. It's going up to the highest court now.
The whole issue's in the courts.
Well, it's
a brand new issue. We're attacking a problem that's never been dealt with before.
Well, but what happens to the children of the surrogates and everything else psychologically? Do you screen
Hey,
the
these
surrogates?
kids are going into the best homes in the country. These are wanted kids, and parents
Not
go
if
out
they're
of
not
their way
born-
to have a
not
Boy,
child.
there's plenty of kids in foster homes right now that are left to languish in these money-making foster homes.
But they're not
Why
healthy
don't you
white
work
babies.
to do something to help these couples?
Why would we-
These loving couples, all right, which I think is a lot of crap. Why don't we do something? Why don't we do something why don't we do something to encourage these couples to go into the foster homes, take some of these
You
kids
know,
out?
if we could have those loving couples in this room and you said that face to face, I'd say fine. I bet you couldn't do it.
Oh, I bet
because
you
they
I
are.
can.
I don't think you
You
could.
haven't met me, baby. Before we meet a real surrogate mother, I'll have a few more questions for Mr. Keene next. Stand by. Welcome back, everybody. On home base with us is the world's leading surrogate attorney, Mr. Noel Keene. Bob Aronstein, who was the first attorney for Mary Beth Whitehead, is with us at the Loudmouth. And also joining us at the Loudmouth is Donna Reagan. Donna, good evening to you.
Hi.
How are you? You've been a surrogate mother twice now. Twins and a little girl, right? In addition to your own child, you've got a child of your own.
Yes, I do.
Why are you having other people's children?
Probably because I had my own son, and we really get a lot of joy out of him. And for me, the idea that there was a couple out there that couldn't have a child that wanted one, and that I could help them, was a strong motivation to become a surrogate mother.
Do you love children?
Adore them.
Do you?
Yeah.
I mean,
How come you didn't keep the children?
Because they weren't mine. They weren't mine to keep.
Pardon me?
They weren't mine to keep. They
Have you
had
had-
parents that were waiting for them that had waited a long time.
So it had nothing to do with the money?
No, that's not why I became a surrogate mother. I mean, a lot of people do things that are altruistic.
If I could
and get paid for
introduce
them.
you to someone who's poor and doesn't have money, would you, and they can't have a child, would you be kind enough to carry that child for them?
It would depend on how I felt about that person.
Okay. You haven't met anyone yet, though, that you feel that way about?
Well, I met the couples that I worked with and would have been willing to do it without a fee for
But she got
them,
paid for
but
it.
didn't.
and not only that...
How much money did you make?
It's $10,000 is the fee that you receive.
Are you
as a
going to do it
surrogate.
again?
Probably not.
You know, it would be
Probably
$10,000 if the baby were born live and adopted. If they did an amniocentesis, which in some of the contracts Mr. Keene had, including Mary Beth's, the father could request or require, and they found there was something wrong with the child, the father could require an abortion on demand.
Okay, that
And
was in Mary
the
Beth
contract.
Whitehead's contract.
That was in Mary Beth's contract.
That was not in my
It was-
contract.
And the judge
Joel, is that
ruled-
right?
What's wrong with having a healthy child if one can
Oh, so if
determine
you
that
get
the
a
child
defective
is
product,
healthy?
you can walk
But
away
you
from
give the father the right to determine an abortion in a woman?
Well,
No.
no,
Nobody
it's the
determines
right
for
to
me
do
what
that
I'm
was in
going
the
to do in my
contract.
pregnancy.
I'm talking about the Mary Beth Whitehead.
Said that
She
she could...
signed that
Someone
contract.
No,
determines
she
for you
signed the
what you're going to do in your
contract without
I
pregnancy.
determined
You
for me
signed
what
the
I did.
contract,
But I
honey.
made the contract that
That's
I
just
signed.
your body being used as a rental space.
That may be exactly the way you feel about it, but
And
I
they could
determine what
require an
happens to me in
abortion
that
on demand.
pregnancy, not him or the father or Noel Keene. I changed my contract so that I didn't have to have an abortion on demand,
Well-
so that an amniocentesis was not a required part of my contract, so that it was a contract that suited me, not Mr. Keene, not the couple, but something that I could live with.
That's the one clause that the judge found was illegal in the contract, that they couldn't require an abortion on demand. But she signed that contract without being advised by a lawyer, the second contract. And the fact is, it was in the contract, and it's in many of Mr. Keene's contracts. So the
Still
couple...
Well, no, as a matter of fact, we conform with what Judge Sorkal ruled in the Baby M case. But I might point out that Mr. Aronstein, who is an expert in the surrogate parenting field, probably has had no contact with any surrogate outside the Mary Beth Whitehead
is
case.
wrong. That
And
is wrong.
probably has never met a couple that's infertile and wanted to contract with a surrogate themselves. Have you, Bob?
Have I ever met an infertile couple? I've spoken to them, but I will not handle a
now,
surrogate contract.
I'm going
with
to
an infertile
interrupt,
couple.
all right, because I'm going to give you a chance, all right? My wife isn't here tonight. She's going to watch this show, and she's going to be bent out of shape. But my wife and I cannot have a baby. I have 3 from previous marriages, but my young wife can't have a baby,
I
all right?
recommend adoption.
And,
I think
well,
adoption
let
is the
me
way
tell
to
you
go.
something. My wife
Well,
was
you don't
thinking
recommend what they should
very
do.
strongly about having the transfer, the whole bit, you know.
In vitro, they could have done
yeah,
with the
well, whatever
Stearns.
the
They
hell
didn't
it
do
is.
that either.
And frankly, we decided we'd like to adopt. But you know something? It's tough as hell to adopt.
And they should reform the laws on adoption. They need to work on that. But
Sure,
But in
they
the
don't want to
meantime, what do you
reform
do
the
about
laws
couples that
because
wanna
they've
have
set up a
children?
cottage industry. The foster homes, where people bring in 5 or 6 kids for 3 months and they're off to another when the kids are abused, and they make some dough out
have
of
you
it.
ever seen a black surrogate? You have a beautiful white surrogate here. You don't see
Well,
any
as
of
a
them.
matter of fact, there are black surrogates.
How many have you
Mr.
got, Noel?
Aronstein.
How many?
We are working with 3 couples now that wish to have their own biological child, even though they could go out and adopt a black infant if they chose.
And how
they
many- how
wish
many
to
surrogates-
express their procreative right of privacy to have their own biological child.
How many births have
What
you
does it
matched?
matter how many in
Noel?
the numbers
Well,
of black, whites,
Do you
or
screen the
animals?
surrogates before they come psychologically? Do you look
Pardon
at,
me?
Do you screen the surrogates before they come
Yeah,
psychologically?
before they become a surrogate, they see a psychiatrist, they see a medical
you look
doctor.
at Mary
Let me
Beth's
finish,
report
all right?
before- did you
They
look at
see
Mary
a
Beth's
medical
report
doctor and they
beforehand?
see a lawyer.
Did you look at Mary Beth's report? Did you look at Mary Beth's psychological report prior to and see that she was not able to surrender her child? Did you see that before you put her into the process?
want me to answer
when your
your question or not?
psychiatrist told you in writing that that was the case?
The psychological report said specifically that Mary Beth Whitehead has shown some denial patterns in her interview with the psychologist. I suggest that the members of ICNY talk to her or have some additional counseling with her before she becomes a surrogate. With that exception, I approve her. We had 2 licensed MSWs on staff that went through that report. Master of Social Workers.
Oh, okay.
That went through that report with her. Just a minute. Let me go one step further. Mary Beth Whitehead had contracted with 2 licensed psychologists themselves before the Stearns, who had that report in their hand and accepted her.
Well, let me ask you about the...
No, let me get on here for just a second, Mr. Ironstein. I'm going to come back to you. I understand, Donna Reagan, that one of your surrogate children accidentally picked up the phone recently when you were calling her parents. What did you feel when that little teeny voice got on the phone?
That little teeny voice had a lot to say. She's a delightful child, and I appreciate being able to be that open and honest with her parents and with her. They have 2 children. Are you going to continue
the relationship with her?
If her parents want that. I mean, the whole situation with me and their parents is that I am open to as much contact as they want, but they determine the pace and how much contact there is.
What's going to happen with that youngster when she gets older? All right, she's going to want to meet her biological mother, isn't she?
I have no idea. I have no.
Well, I mean,
I would say with them, I'm
you look at adopted kids all over this country. I mean, all of them are trying to find out. I have an adopted brother. He's 50 years old. He's still trying to find out who his real parents were.
Because you're talking about an instance where there is a total unknown. These people can contact me at any time and say to me, she needs to see you, she wants to see you, we think now would be an appropriate time for her to meet you, and I'm open to that, and my family is open to that. The fact of the matter is that these are her parents, and they're responsible for her and her life.
Those
and that
are her
includes
parents?
the decision to
Those
tell
are her
or not to
parents
tell
as
her.
opposed to that is her mother, right?
Those are her parents, and that's her mother. Just like I'm my little boy's mother.
Yeah, and the little boy who sees the child being given away thinks, Mommy might sell me later on, just like she sold the other baby.
No, your child might feel that way, but not mine.
Let's take a look at the psychology.
Bob, let me ask you. Donna seems to be pretty well adjusted, all right? And she does, let's face it.
Right.
We know Mr. Keene's bankers are happy. The parents apparently are happy. Why aren't you happy?
Because I have seen about 12 or 15 of the surrogates who have gone through the process. In fact, I mean, one of the first cases was the Noyes case in Rochester. You had a transsexual couple. Here's a man who changed himself into a woman. She married a man, and then they had decided they were going to have a child.
Whoa, go slow. Let me hear this. The guy does what?
A guy had an operation, became a woman.
Okay.
Then he married a man.
Then he married a man.
This is a real case.
Okay. Now
and
the man, what's the man do?
They decided they wanted to have children, and they couldn't have children as a couple because he didn't have, reproductive organs. So what they did was they went to an infertility center and decided that the male part of the marriage would donate his semen to have a child, and they went and had a baby through a surrogate. And when the surrogate found out that the baby was going to go to a transsexual mother, she refused to give the baby up. And there was a lawsuit was finally dropped, and that was the end of it.
I mean, that's got to be really tough when you got to call your father mom, too. Right? Guess you have to be a female tennis player to do that.
Case. Then you had the AIDS case. You had a woman who just recently developed a child with AIDS through the father who apparently had AIDS, and he didn't want to take the child, and neither did the mother. So nobody wanted the baby.
So what happened to the baby, Noel?
I don't know anything about this case you're talking about. I was just going to make another point that maybe is even a little bit more relative to what we're talking about. 1 out of 6 of every one of these persons in here is going to be infertile based on national stats. And they're going to have to solve it one way or another. And if it's not through adoption, then how are they going to solve that problem? And that's the problem we're confronting with now and dealing with today.
Do you do adoption work, too?
I don't.
Don't do adoption.
I don't.
Okay. Do you do adoption work?
Yes, I do adoption work. And I think that's the proper way of doing things, because one of the doctrines of adoption is informed consent. And a woman who has to surrender a child at birth
That was a pretty close call. That puck wasn't over that line by 2 miles.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Joining us at home base is Dr. Robert Fierro. He's a fertilization expert. Bob, coming back to you quickly on that transsexual thing where the guy became a woman or a woman became a man or whatever.
The Noyes case, N-O-Y-E-S.
Yeah, whatever that was. No, didn't you put that together?
I did.
Noel obviously doesn't care what he puts together if he makes a buck.
Just a minute. Let me explain how it really was now. Mrs. Noyes had a sexual anomaly.
Was that Mrs. before she became
Well, let
Mr.?
me finish now. Come on, there's only one Mrs. Mrs. Noyes had a sexual anomaly at birth.
A sexual what?
And not distinguishable as either a male or a female.
Oh.
In her later years, through the medical profession, she became a female. Through the legal profession, Mr. Ernstein, she became recognized as a female. She legally married Mr. Noyes, and then they came to me. That is true. Nothing else. And have no reservations. And have no reservations about working with them.
Same way I understood it, Bob.
Well, I'm not so sure. I think he pointed her out as being a transsexual, and that she went and had a sex change, and that's not what he said.
She didn't go have a sex change.
She had a sex determination because she was indistinguishable either way.
So, I mean...
Major difference.
Major difference?
Yeah, major difference.
I mean, you go get your thing cut off, you can't become a... Boy, I'm going to be careful some of these doctors I go to. Dr. Fierro, all right? Dr. Fierro, you're involved in every aspect of infertility and all the alternatives. Tell us quickly about some of them, will you?
Well, the surrogate parenting is a very, very small part. We spend most of our time inducing ovulation, getting women who do not ovulate to ovulate, doing microsurgical laser repair of fallopian tubes, working with couples who can't consummate the
you can say
union.
anything on this show.
Good. Helping them on paraplegics and stuff like that. We deal with a very, very unfortunate group of humanity, people that cannot reproduce. It's a heartbreaker. It may not kill you. It may not get the headlines that cancer and heart disease does,
But do you
it
work
affects more
with? Do you work with people who are poor?
Yes.
Or is it only people who can afford this?
Absolutely not. We
What
work
is
with
this
poor
in
people. I
vitro?
work with poor people.
Okay. You do
Now,
work with
I can't
poor
speak for every doctor doing this, but I work with poor people.
people. What is this in vitro transfer stuff that I hear about?
Well, you take the basic process of in vitro fertilization, which is commonly and easiestly explained as a test tube baby.
How does that work?
All right, well, you take the male factor, the sperm, usually produced by masturbation. You take the egg by...
Guys got to go in and masturbate to get the sperm?
Yeah, it's the only way to do it.
Okay.
You get an egg by either laparoscopy or ultrasound retrieval. You put them in a test tube, which is actually a Petri dish. Fertilization occurs, and then that embryo is very carefully brought back.
Fertilization occurs now when
In
you put the ovum in.
When you put the ovum and the sperm together in the Petri
Okay.
dish.
And then what do you do with the ovum after? How do you make
It's reimplanted in the uterus. Very simple. Just slid up a plastic tube.
reimplanted in whose uterus?
Well, whoever. That's where you get the legal and ethical.
Is it always reimplanted in the mother's uterus, or indeed sometimes don't you have another woman that you can implant it in who can carry it?
Either way can be done. In the programs I'm associated with, it only goes back to the mothers.
I've been involved in one where they put it into a surrogate, and where she gave birth to the child, not genetically related to the child. And as a matter of fact, we had a court order issued saying that the birth mother was not the mother, but rather the ovum donor was.
That's the Virginia case you took.
It was not the Virginia case. It was in Michigan. How you saying?
All right. So it went into someone who wasn't really the mother.
That's correct. Although she was truly a carrier, a surrogate.
She was just a carrier.
That's correct.
So
And
let me see if I understand this, because I'm pretty dense about some of this stuff, all right? This means that my sperm, excuse me, I knocked the mic off back there, sorry. My sperm fertilizes my wife's egg, and we put it into her.
because your wife...
Because my wife can't carry it.
That's correct.
My wife can't get implantation.
Put it right over there, right.
But even if my wife could carry it, I mean, my wife wants to work, wants to have some fun, man, play a little tennis.
But you don't
no time to carry.
You don't
Doesn't
find
want
women,
the stretch marks.
You don't find women that would ever pass up the experience of delivering their own child if they could. You can make those arguments saying, sure, this is a convenient pregnancy. You show me the woman that won't carry her child if she could.
And we'd never be a
Well,
surrogate mother
wait a
for a
minute,
woman
wait a
who
minute.
wouldn't want to carry her own child.
Take the
if she
case
could.
of Whitehead. Mrs. Stern's not infertile. Mrs. Stern had a mild case of MS, and in the
Well,
contract it
that's easy
said
for you
the
to
sole
say.
purpose of the agreement was to help Mr. Stern and his infertile wife have a child. Now, she self-diagnosed herself having MS, and then she went to a doctor who said she had a mild case of MS, and the testimony on the trial was that she could bear children. Yet she chose not in vitro, but to use Mary Beth's egg and her husband's sperm to have a child.
We've had a woman with diabetes who was blind, who chose not to risk her children being blind by having her own offspring. We've had women who have been habitual boarders use surrogates to be... It's just, you know,
So mothers
we've
with
even
MS,
had...
people with MS shouldn't have
We've
children.
even
then. Is that
had
what
a
you're
case
saying?
where a
Most of them
woman
do. A lot of
gave
people
birth
have
to a
children.
child the day before the surrogate because she had an unexplained infertility problem, which many women have.
No biological connection to the surrogate.
That's well, in this case we talked about, no,
Yeah.
there's not.
No biological connection at all. All right. Let me ask, let me go back to Donna for just a second. Donna, do you feel like your body was rented for 9 months, frankly?
No, frankly, I feel like I gave it for 9 months.
You gave it for 9 months? So you're willing to give back the 10 grand,
my
right?
decision to do it, not Mr. Keene's or the couple's. You know, this was my choice. I wasn't exploited. Nobody asked me to be a surrogate. I found out about surrogate parenting, and I went to them and said, I would like your help in finding a couple that I
Are
could do
you
this
going to
with.
have more children of your own that you keep?
I have no idea yet. But at this time, my husband and I don't have any plans of having any more children. But that could change, you know, next week or the next month.
You're a tough young lady, I'll tell you that. And you stand right up for yourself, and I admire you for it. But I got to believe, I got to tell you, I know of a case that came to me today where the woman was a surrogate mother. And indeed, she became one because she wanted a swimming pool and didn't have enough money for a swimming pool.
You know, it's not up to me or anybody else to determine what her motivation is. If her primary motivation was money, that's entirely up to her. That's not going to say that she's going to be any less a quote-unquote good surrogate for a couple, just that maybe she didn't go into it for the same reasons that I did. I've heard a lot of different explanations for why women became surrogate mothers, and in the support group that I work with, you know, everybody has a different reason for doing it, and they don't all have to be mine to make the value of what they did any better.
How many surrogate mothers do you have in your file, Noel?
Well, there's probably 100 women that wish to be surrogates, but that doesn't mean a couple would choose them. I don't say that you're a surrogate. You meet a couple and the surrogate selects. They select each other. They meet one another.
Have you ever...
They have a book, by
Have
the
you
way.
ever had people come into your office and talk to them for a little while who want to have a surrogate mother, taken out a book and gone through the book
Yes,
and shown them someone that you think would be, they want blue-eyed, blonde-haired, and...
Well, just about every couple wants the same surrogate. I mean, it's the only difference might be the color of the hair or the skin tone.
Morton,
Other than
have you ever
that, they're all
noticed
looking...
Seems to me what we're doing here, Bob, seems to me we're really playing God. If we go back 40 or 50 years, find a guy by the name of Dr. Mengele who, you know, the Nuremberg trial said was a very bad guy because he was basically trying to do the same thing, a little genetic engineering here and there.
You can have sex determination, too. They have cases. They had a case recently, which is in litigation now, where a woman, they wanted a male child. They excluded the female sperm. It happened down in Michigan. It was in Michigan. It was one of Noel's cases.
It was. Which one was it?
Patty Forster. They decided to have
was my case.
They decided to have a male child, and
Knows a lot about your
and
cases.
they had a male.
Yeah, I know. The man's paid... At least he pays half attention. He doesn't know everything.
Well, they had a
Wrong
male
half the time.
child, and again, she's trying to get her child back. She had changed her mind. There's litigation on that. There's
What litigation?
super ovulation going on, where they spice up the woman so that she can get pregnant quicker. There's all sorts of genetic engineering. I
Well,
don't
wait a
think it's-
second. Dr. Piero, tell us about this super ovulation so they can get pregnant quicker. That doesn't seem to be anything wrong with that.
Well,
Unless, of
probably
course, you
not,
happen to be
except it
dating her.
Except it doesn't really work very well. Most of the programs that based on superovulation don't have very good success rates. The better success rates in vitro fertilization and egg retrieval are with a smaller number of ovum retrieved, usually between 3 and 5.
Of our ethics, the medical ethics and the ethicists in this country, have they caught up to medical science, really?
No,
I mean,
they're way behind what's going on.
They're way behind,
But
aren't
people have been doing this. People have been borrowing a sister-in-law, an aunt, making all sorts of private arrangements for centuries.
But there's no money involved there.
It's happening more and more that people
Well,
will
maybe
come in
we
with
have
their
to
own
learn to
surrogate,
take
and
the
they
money
say,
out of
we
it.
want this woman to carry our child. We have nothing to do with the arrangement.
We have
They're
laws
just
against
asking.
buying and selling children in this country.
Yeah, and it's also been determined that surrogate parenting doesn't fall under those laws.
Not yet.
It hasn't.
And it's illegal in
There's
the
a
state of
Supreme Court
Louisiana.
decision out of Kentucky. I'm sure you've read it,
Kentucky's the
Bob.
only state.
Well, at least it's been one high
Michigan
court
won't
that's
let you
decided
sell, will
that.
they?
What
Michigan
about
won't
Judge
let you sell.
Sorkow? What did he decide on it?
Judge Sorkow's decision will be
What
decided.
did
by
the
Supreme
judge
Court
in the
next week
surrogate
or so.
court in New York decide on the
I
payment?
can't wait until the people decide, damn it, because we've got too many judges deciding all this crap for us. Let these people decide. Next, I've got some ideas that won't cost a dime. That might Mr. Keene and his friends out of the baby business. Stand by.
Are you tired of sitting home watching the same old boring television shows? Television is alive again at Channel 9. So be a part of our studio audience, if you dare. For tickets, call right now, 201-867-TIXX.
All right, tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get our, as we always do, we're going to get our audience involved in this because I think they're the final determination, right? Some of these ladies and gentlemen in our audience tonight will be judges, and they'll be able to sit and overturn some of these ridiculous laws that some of these cracker-brained judges are coming up with. Dr. Fierro, I understand we now have an 85% shot of picking the gender of a child. Is that right?
That is correct. The Erickson method, and there are other methods that are...
Aren't we
still being
really
worked on.
nuzzling up to Mengele's with this kind of stuff?
No, absolutely not.
No?
We're trying to get things on a much more moral, much more ethical basis.
Moral, ethical. When I get to pick the gender of my kid?
Yeah, look at history. If you got the wrong kind of baby, they push the baby out to die. Wouldn't it be better to pre-select and take what you get?
No. Pre-select?
Better
No,
to put a baby out to die?
It would be better to take what you get. This society doesn't put them out to die.
Well, we're not dealing with just this society. We're dealing with the whole world. We are citizens of the world.
We're citizens of this country first. Citizens of this country. Too many damn people. That's what's screwing up everything.
Most of the world.
You don't
spend a lot of
think
your
you don't
tax
think
money
it's
in foreign
I go in and I
aid.
want a baby girl, all right?
Sure.
And it's a boy, and I say, no, I don't want to take that little crap and throw it out
That's
there.
horrible.
There's nothing wrong with doing that, though, right?
I think it's horrible to throw something away, especially
One of the
a
most basic things
baby.
about being citizens of this country is that we can decide what we want to do. And
The
what
baby
he's
can't.
saying,
Yeah, you can decide what you want to do, but the baby can't decide diddly squat.
did you?
If you didn't want a boy or a girl that goes out into the traffic. Do I what?
Did you decide what you wanted to do? You didn't have any choice about being born. These babies are the most wanted babies in the world. Every kid in the world should be wanted as much as
Every baby's
these.
wanted. It's
Every baby's
only
wanted.
parents who are unwanting. There's people out there who want those babies all the time, but the women in this country are dumping them in garbage pails through abortion. Bob, instead of creating a generation of psychological surrogate eunuchs, all right, which I think we're doing, why don't we give the kids languishing in orphanages and foster homes a chance?
I think they should. And I think that there are a lot of babies out there that yearn to be adopted. And not only babies, but children, too, of various ages. And I think that they may not be healthy white babies for the rich couples.
Who cares? I mean,
But-
my wife wants a baby, and I'm telling you, so my wife will see it tonight. She'll be bent out of shape that I said it in national television, but she wants a baby. She doesn't care if it's black, white, yellow, green, orange, purple.
There are
She
plenty
wants
of
a
places.
baby.
There are plenty of places to adopt children. If you go to the agencies, there are people. If somebody wants to adopt and goes through the process, and some of the process needs to be reformed, and they're starting to reform the process now, I think adoption can work, and it works a lot better where the woman voluntarily surrenders the child after birth than one who signs a contract prior to birth and then has to give the baby away once she births the child, even if she doesn't want to.
Yeah, I think
that
that's
is
a
a problem.
tremendous. I think that is the extreme exploitation of women.
So do I.
I think that's You know, and why aren't the feminists doing something about it? They're ominously silent about this.
The problem is that the feminist movement is split on the issue, and they can't get both sides together to agree on a position.
That's because part of it is that they have, for years, accepted and supported the idea that a woman can, because it's medically safe and legally available, abort a pregnancy. But you're telling me, and they're telling me, that because this is different and they don't agree with it, that I can't begin a pregnancy under the conditions I choose?
I'm not telling you that.
And who are you to say
I'm telling you
that
should not be
adoption
allowed
is
to
the proper
sell your
step
baby.
for everybody here?
There are laws against selling children. Now, Noah will argue that the father is taking his own child back, but that adoptive mother is buying that child.
Seems to me Mr. Abraham Lincoln, all right, got rid of slavery a long time ago, selling human beings, but we're back to selling them again.
And slavery is doing something you don't want to do against your wishes. I did this because
a lot of us do things that the law tell us to do, sweet lady, all right, that may be against our wishes, but are good for the whole society. You can't tell me enslaving an entire generation to be in your womb when it doesn't belong in your womb and it goes to someone else, all right? That's baloney. Sir, you wanted to say something. Let me hear what this man has to say.
Yeah, in this whole discussion of designer babies, I've heard rich, poor, sperm, ovum. Nobody's really touched on the intrinsic dignity of the child itself.
Good for you.
And
Good for you.
this culture is supposed to be predicated on 2,500 years of Judeo-Christian ethics. Where the hell have they gone? And as far as children being sold...
Ask the doctors who are experimenting. Ask the lawyers who are making all kinds of bucks on this. Baby, when the bucks come into it, that's where the name of the game is laid. We're going to be back in just a minute. Stand by. What we have seen so far is male doctors, male lawyers, working it out for the ladies, all right? Again, it's the ladies. Let's go to our studio audience and see what they have to say.
Yes,
Ma'am.
I would like to commend
What's
Ms.
first
Reagan
name?
for what she... My name is Laura.
Hi, Laura.
And I would like to commend her for what she's doing for her love and, you know, her care for life and children. But I don't know if I could ever do that. Unfortunately, adoption is not working according to how people want it to work because it takes so many years, and it's just a tough situation for everyone.
It's again the bureaucracy of the government.
Right, and it's a lot of lives are involved, and it's tough for everybody. So it's a tough thing to judge by. But I really give her a lot of credit. I don't think I could do it, but for her.
Well, adoption certainly doesn't work when you got lawyers like Lisa Steinberg's adoptive father,
right,
does it?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
the kid wasn't really even adopted.
Right.
So again, it shows if you got a couple of bucks and you know the law, you can get around that stuff.
Right,
Then you beat the kid to death. Ma'am.
Yes, I respect a man or a woman's desire to have their own child, but I feel that if you're willing to love your own child, you'd be able to love another child just as much. And that's what I don't understand with these clauses. Well, if this child isn't so-called perfect, I'd rather not go through with it. I just feel that it's ridiculous. If you're going to love a child, you'll love any child, and that's just basically it.
Well, you feel the way most of us in this room feel. Most of us at home feel.
But not everybody.
Downey, you have a different idea.
Well, no, it's not that. I think that the love that you can feel for a child, I mean, I feel that way about all children that I've met. But at the same time, I don't know whether it would be within myself to raise a child that were severely handicapped or that would need special needs. I mean, my son is a special child. But if he were different, I mean, I would have accepted him. But to adopt a child, to make the determination that that's within me, to raise that child with special needs, that's not for everybody, and that's not for me to decide.
I see, but I'm speaking towards...
a defective product, and if you don't want it, you can turn it away and only take a perfect product.
No, what I'm saying is that for people who adopt, adoption is not, as you put it, the proper solution. This is not up to you to decide what another person has inside of them about raising a child. This is about what is important to them and how they feel about raising a child, not you.
But they shouldn't have a right to reject the child that they paid for.
Mr. Aaronstein, they don't have the right to reject their child. It's his baby with the legal implications that go along with it in every single case.
When you say legal, no, you're talking financial support. You're
I'm
not
talking about
custody.
the legal obligations of having a child.
You can't force custody on anybody.
Well, okay, well, that's everyone in the total population. But he's got the same legal obligations as any other father has.
Financially.
Any legal obligations,
Let me tell you
financial
guys,
otherwise.
you wonder why we've screwed up so many generations in this country. We're really going to screw up the next one, not this one now, but a couple of 100 years down the road when we start having these cosmetic
We got 200 families now that were able to celebrate Christmas last year because they now have a family to celebrate it with. Up till this time, they didn't.
Let them go to an orphanage and celebrate.
There are
with
no
them.
orphanages, and there are no white infants.
You bet
There
your
are
life
none.
there aren't. You bet your life there
And
aren't.
they have a right to
because
have their own child.
They made sure that all of the white infants were aborted, and 38% of the abortions come from blacks, and that's genocide because the whites have always wanted to get rid of the blacks, and you now got a legal way of doing it. We'll be back in a minute. I want to say before this program ends tonight that to Donna Reagan, my applause, all right? She's quite a gutsy lady. Got in here, stood up for what she believes in. Just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean you don't have every right to agree with what you're doing, all right?
That's my point exactly.
That's exactly right. You have every right to agree with it, and as a conservative, I'll fight for your right, as all these liberals that we get on stage will fight like hell not to let me have my say. You're nervous.
Yeah,
What do you want to say?
Nothing. I just want to know what the big deal is if you have to wait 5 years for a baby. So what? I mean, so you got to wait 5 years. If the husband and the wife don't have enough love for one another that they don't honestly believe that that's a family right then and there.
If they can't celebrate Christmas because they don't have a baby,
Right. Oh, what a
then
shame.
that husband doesn't love the wife, and the wife doesn't give the rat's nostril about the husband.
I know. Rent a baby for the holidays? Maybe it's like a good line. He could get into it. Rent a baby for the holidays?
How about if you're 36 years old when you finally decide that we can't
Life
have a
is so
child,
tough.
and now we got to wait
Let's
5
think
more,
about those
7 more.
character-building experiences.
Pardon me?
Let's think about those character-building experiences. Like
No,
maybe-
she wants to help you build some character.
Well, thank you.
Huh? With the amount of money you've made on these babies, you should be able to buy some. That's for sure. Babies are not...
Mr. Keene, I wanted to ask you, now the surrogate mothers, they have to have psychological tests and go through physical tests. What about the parents?
We do not require it.
Why? Because they pay a price?
What's his child?
You know they don't require it, but the Steinbergs would have qualified easily.
I think that's really stupid.
Steinbergs would have qualified easily. It wouldn't have been
Nobody
great.
made myself or any other father go through any psychological testing before we had our children. Nor the mother.
Hey, once again, doctors and lawyers are running wild, folks, making millions of bucks. And this time it's over selling and making babies. Technological advances in medicine are being implemented on a widespread basis well before the American people have had an opportunity to debate the consequences of this so-called human achievement. You're the American people. You folks here and you folks at home. Start debating it and kick the ass on these judges who don't pay attention to what's going on.